Medical Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm going to be part of the patient advocacy panel here at the International Spine Study Group annual meeting. I'm really excited to be part of this year's meetings and share my story as a scoliosis patient and bring you guys along for the day.
Never include the patient. So much of the research that you do, so much of the didactics that you have is never centered toward the patient. And in the end, that's who we're treating. And so it really moved me, and we invited Michaela to come out, and she made an incredible effort to hop on a plane, to come from Detroit. And then so after Marcus gives his talk, she's going to provide her perspective on care and what research looks like and why the ISSG was important to her to reach out to me. And I think it's a very refreshing perspective. But again, and I keep telling you guys this, one of the things that we're trying to do is to foster the next generation of leaders. And so if somehow, some way, as we look then to begin integrating into our research, into our thought process, the patient perspective, not only I think from an outcome standpoint, but in terms of preparation and how they can be better informed. So I'm delighted and honored to introduce Marcus John, as well as Jim Liu, who was a patient of mine and said she wanted to come give a talk, and then after that, we'll have Michaela give us a talk. So, thanks.
Where I begin, in the quiet, in the still, with every scar beneath my skin, I've got the strength, I've got the will, not who I was, not who I've been, but here and now is where I begin. The mirror never told the truth, only pieces of a younger youth, but I've grown softer in the fight, found my fire in the fading light. Every broken step I've made built the ground where I can stay. Where I begin, in the quiet, in the still, with every scar beneath my skin, I've got the strength, I've got the will, not who I was, not who I've been, but here and now is where I begin.
Michaela reached out to us, was it probably May, June?
Yeah, something like that.
Just out of the blue, sent me an email wanting, she became cognizant of this meeting, and just kind of reached out via an email, and then so we set up a conference call, and Brett and Jenny and Christy and Ray and I all kind of hopped on the call, and then were able to talk to her. And her story was so unbelievably inspiring that we just had to fly her out and have her join. I think sometimes I think that you get caught up in the weeds with research and technique, and it becomes a little dehumanized. And having this perspective, I think, is incredibly powerful. So I'll give it to you, Michaela.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bess. I really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela Dabert. I came from Michigan to be here with all of you this weekend. I am 26 years old, and I was born with a physical disability, osteogenesis imperfecta. I am in a room full of spine surgeons, fellows, and residents. So is there anyone in this room who has not heard of osteogenesis imperfecta? Thank God. I was hoping nobody would raise their hand, because I was really going to be worried about the future of medical education for spine surgeons. My journey with scoliosis is anything but typical. In fact, everything I'm going to share with you today absolutely throws a wrench in everything you've learned this weekend, because my story and my journey does not fit any of the statistics, any of the typical procedures that you would do for a patient, and what my team has done is nothing short of a miracle. And it's something that I hope you will keep in the back of your mind as you meet with patients throughout your journey. Growing up through childhood, osteogenesis imperfecta obviously comes with a lot of challenges. I've had over 100 fractures throughout my lifetime and 30 surgeries. Growing up, scoliosis wasn't something that impacted my daily life. And with osteogenesis imperfecta, especially having type 3, which is the second most severe type, you really have to prioritize what's important. And OI patients quite literally live by the philosophy, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I could be in the OR for any little thing that we could come up with to try to fix. But there's also an element of quality of life and allowing a person to live, because I'm so much more than who I am in those hospital four walls. And so growing up, there was something that my parents and I too didn't feel like it was necessary to prioritize. And I also wasn't medically strong enough to endure that type of surgery and what would be needed to correct it, because I faced some respiratory challenges growing up and just other long bone surgeries that needed. This is a picture of some notes that I copied from my medical chart. These are a look at the difficult conversations that we had leading up to, as my scoliosis continued to get worse. It was something that I noticed and something that my team brought to me. At this point, I was 21 years old, and so to have these discussions was really scary. In your 20s, you're focused on college and wanting to start your career. Instead, I was faced with a really difficult circumstance of my scoliosis progressing in a way that I never imagined. I think that what makes my situation really unique is I didn't present medically like a typical scoliosis patient with 150 and 180 degree curve. Issues that impacted me on a daily basis. So just how I presented just didn't fit the mold of what I looked like inside. But as I continued to get older, this was a conversation that we needed to have, and these were some of the things that we talked about that could be a reality for me if I didn't have the surgery. And even having the surgery, these were risks coming out of it, not being able to breathe independently on my own anymore, and that is just absolutely terrifying. I also share my life on social media. I share my story and what it's like to live with OI and kind of break the stigma of what it's like to live with a disability, because I think as a society we view disability as something really negative and as a burden. Valuing the human life is something that I hope is all important to you, because my team, yes, they took an oath to take care of patients, but this was really unorthodox what they did. So I went through 14 weeks of halo traction. This is my surgeon, Dr. Michelle Carrot at Michigan Medicine. This was a few days before my 22nd birthday in the halo, and the hospital that I had the surgery at, they actually send patients home in halo. So they created a contraption to connect to my power wheelchair. I use a power wheelchair as my form of mobility, and so they created a system that the halo traction system connects to my wheelchair. And so I was in this for 14 weeks, and what really made my journey so much more difficult is all of this is difficult as it is, but I also went through it during the height of the COVID-19 protocols when patients were isolated. And I never want us to forget what was done to patients during that time, because yes, it was considered unprecedented, but I don't think anything is ever as unprecedented as leaving patients isolated during the most vulnerable time. I was on a ventilator after surgery, and so I was unable to communicate by myself. I was given a whiteboard and an expo marker, and that was how I was able to communicate. And after the surgery, I was actually given an incorrect medication and was throwing up while I was on the ventilator, and I could have aspirated. And thankfully, I was writing on my whiteboard and requesting to know what medications I was given, and that's how I was able to get them to stop that. But I had nobody there to advocate for myself but me, and that is an incredibly vulnerable place to leave patients. And I just pray that we never do that to patients again, and that doctors are willing to step up to hospital administrations and say, I'm not willing to allow my patient to be isolated, because I'm very grateful for how I was able to advocate for myself, but not all patients are. And so I think that's really, really important. This image is really powerful for me because This was a list of all the things that I had to consent to on the day of my spinal fusion surgery. My spinal fusion surgery was about 10 hours, the first one. And this image just really is powerful to me because I knew what I was about to agree to was incredibly risky, but because of my comorbidities and the challenges that I faced before surgery, these risks were more real for me than the typical scoliosis patient. And so looking at this image, I still can't believe I said yes to this, but I just had a will and want to live. None of you in this room can put an expiration on me or any of your patients. I just didn't want to find out if my surgeons were right, if I had 10 years or less to live. This is me after my spinal fusion surgery, awake and intubated after the surgery. Because of my respiratory compromised system, they just thought it was safer to try to pull the ventilator right away. So I was awake and intubated, and then this is me and my surgeon, Dr. Michelle Carey, after I was extubated. He prepared me for being intubated for at least 48 hours, if not longer, and I was extubated 24 hours later. So I remember telling her, like, I'm actually getting off that ventilator tomorrow. So, and I was determined, and I did, and that was nothing short of a miracle. A week later, I faced complications from my surgery. I woke up and was unable to feel my legs and portions of my arms, and I actually had a resident tell me that it was just because I was stressed, because I was alone. And I basically said that if you don't give me an MRI right now, then this whole hospital is going to hear about it. And of course, the patient is always right. At 8 o'clock at night, I had an MRI, and they found one of the screws had migrated in my cervical spine, which is why I couldn't feel my arms and legs. And so I pray that none of you would do that to your patients. I'm already vulnerable, alone, by myself, and here I am being dismissed by a resident who apparently still had a lot to learn. So patients are their best advocate. And so a week later, I had to have the surgery done again, another 7-hour revision surgery to input some more hardware and better stabilize it. So within 2 weeks, within a week, I had 17 hours of spine surgery. This is what my spine looked like before my surgery, and this is what it looks like now. This is probably unlike an x-ray that any of you will ever see. And to some of you, this probably looks like an awful outcome, and I think that that's what makes my story so unique and so powerful is, to me, this is good enough. My surgeon and I knew that we weren't going into this looking for perfection. We were looking at this from a perspective of giving me stability and a little more time to be able to live and go on adventures and be with my friends and family and experience all that life has for me. My spine doesn't look like something that you will see likely in your career, but the reason I want to be here and be part of scoliosis conversations is because it still matters. What my surgeon consulted many surgeons, I consulted many surgeons independently because of the risks that I was agreeing to do. I wanted to get several perspectives, and all of them said that they wouldn't recommend surgery. One actually said that I wouldn't make it off the table. And so my surgeon really went out on a limb for me, and I think that stems from our 16-year relationship, and that takes time to build and trust and be able to make these really big decisions. It really is, like this to me is an image of a miracle, and I really am doing amazing. Like I am able to be as more independent than I've ever been able to be. I'm so much stronger physically, mentally, and emotionally. This surgery has just been an answered prayer for me. I do think about the future, and yes, I'm doing well now, and the outcome was good now, but I do think about what things will be like for me when I get older. Will this be able to continue to sustain me to live a full and fulfilling life? And as of now, where medical research stands for patients with scoliosis, we have done everything that we can possibly do to give me the best quality of life. And so for patients like myself to be part of these conversations and being able to put a face to the meaning of the work that you all do is really important to me. It gives me purpose, because for your patients that have a will and want to live, I promise you that they will go to the ends of the earth to do that. And you may not be able to help them, but help them find someone who can. My life is so much more, like I said, than who I am outside the hospital four walls. I used this challenge to inspire and motivate people from around the world. My story's been featured in People magazine, and I've gotten to share my scoliosis journey there and what it's like to live with OI. And then I'm working to change the face of beauty and fashion, and I was featured on a billboard in Times Square. So I live a full and fulfilling life, and people look at me and they wonder how I am able to be so happy and just happy with the life that I live. And I just know that God has a plan and a purpose for me, and I just couldn't be more grateful for the gift that my medical team has given me and done something that nobody said was possible. I told people, that they asked me why I did this, and I said, because life is worth fighting for. And that's become my motto, day in and day out, and something that I think all of us can relate to because we all face challenges. Mine is just a little bit more visible. So thank you all for allowing me to share and be here with all of you today.
I was born unbroken, fire in my soul, walking through the wreckage, still coming out whole, lightning in my laughter, thunder in my veins, every loss just makes me stronger, ain't no shame in pain. I was born unbroken, yeah, I rise up every time, hard life.
Incredibly moving story, and we're so honored that you reached out to us and allow us to be your host.
Thank
and
you.
Our guest. Thank you, Sydney, also for coming out and helping as well. So it's just an absolute pleasure and honor. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much. That was such an awesome, it's amazing hearing your life story, and
just what a fight this has been for you. I think for new fellows, here's a lot of people who are early in their careers, and at a time when they're trying to figure out how they're going to see the world, how they're going to interact with patients. I think what is something you would like to say to to these new trainees who are kind of at this formative period in their training?
Yeah, I think that's so important because I know you probably all are so overwhelmed with all of the information that you are taking in each and every day. But I think looking at this is your why. Giving patients the ability to live outside of the hospital. That's your why. The research is cool, and I'm glad I had the surgery, but I didn't have it to look a certain way. I already look different than everybody else. I didn't care what my spine looked like. I just wanted to be here to live life, to be with my friends and with my family. And all of your patients are going to have different goals of what's important to them. I have friends with osteogenesis imperfecta who followed my journey and said, my gosh, I would have never done that. And, that's okay. And I said that too. I actually have a YouTube video on my channel where someone asked me if I would have scoliosis surgery. And I said, no, I don't think so. It'd be really risky. And I don't know if I want to do that. And so never say never. And I think when you're in those dire moments, you really make decisions that you'd never find yourself making. Always listen to your patients. Like the resident who told me that I was just stressed when I couldn't feel any of my extremities. Your patient will be right almost every single time. And if they're not, what's it to you if you order a test if they're asking for it? When you go home, whether you ordered that test or not is not going to affect what you're making for dinner or where you're going afterward. You're helping your patient feel validated and making them feel the best that they possibly can in whatever circumstance they live with. I would also say that it's not up to you to decide what is a quality of life. It's up to the patient because, the surgeons who said no, I appreciate their honesty because I wouldn't want a surgeon who is not confident in what they're doing. That is a really scary place for patients. But for me, it was worth it, and it was worth taking the risks, and I realized it's a lot easier for me to sit here and say that because I got the miracle that I prayed for, and I realized every single day how different my life could look. Having a team who was willing to partner with me based on, they didn't think that, some doctors look at me and they think, why are you coming to me at all? Why do you do the things you do at all? Because I look at you and you look like you wouldn't have any type of quality of life. And they don't know all the cool things that I get to do and the impact that I get to have. And so just knowing that It's not up for you to decide what your quality of life may be different than your patient's, and that's okay. It doesn't have to look the same.
I think so much of this marries with what we do in the ISSG, and so one of the things that we wanted to find out at the outset of all of our work on the research side was to really dispel some of the myths around scoliosis and spinal deformity. One of those was that ASD is not painful. I mean, that was 15 years ago. That kind of came out from prior publications that didn't take into account sagittal plane, right? But we know that ASD can be massively debilitating to people. And so we got into the spinal pelvic parameters and what that looks like and how we can then, the pain generators will change. Well, fast forward now, especially as we're looking at developing this outcome-based tool, we know now that the #1 health deficit for patients with adult spinal deformity is self-image, right? And so we just published that for the first publication this a couple weeks ago. And I mean, this wasn't a canned talk from Jenny. I mean, this is right from the patient. The #1 deficit is self-image. And then what we found most recently, that will be in press here soon, we did the first 2-year outcomes study on using PROMIS, patient outcome measurement information system, the NIH PROM, and we found that the #1 deficit within PROMIS is social function and satisfaction with discretionary social roles. So what does that mean? It means that when patients have deficits surrounding, kind of self-image, which can impact mental health, they're massively dissatisfied with what they can do, both in their social roles, which is considered work, but especially their discretionary social roles. What are they doing with their quote free time? And do they feel isolated? Which then leads to even more than dissatisfaction, physical function, deprivation, as well as pain. And so I think that as we then move this piece forward as a community of clinical scientists, again, it's really behooves us and up to us to unlock so many of these things that really are unknown in this space. And I think these are 2 perfect examples of it. So thank you very much.